Hey, hi, Bernardo Moya here, founder of The Best You, author of The Question, and I'm very excited and delighted to be interviewing today my friend, Owen Fitzpatrick. Hey, Owen, how are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you doing?
I'm very good. And well, look, this has been a very exciting journey, and obviously the whole idea around a lot of what we're doing today now is continuing to interview inspiring people. Owen has been on the radar for a long time. He's obviously, someone that's extremely talented. He has many facets in his life, and I loved how he's evolved over the years. He's a psychologist, and he's helped tens of thousands of people over the years. He's been obviously doing a lot of training with NLP. He's an author of many books, 6 books in particular. He's got The Charismatic Edge and They're Not Enough Hours. And also he's co-written many books with Dr. Richard Bandler. And I know for a fact that Owen is probably one of his favorite people in the world. And that says something. He's a speaker. He's a trainer. He's a broadcaster. He's a world traveler. He's an actor as well, which he added onto his many facets recently. And he's just an all-round grounded guy that has phenomenal knowledge and expertise and has always had my absolute most admiration and respect, especially within the NLP industry, where, although there's some many great people, there are not a lot of people that actually can walk their talk, and Owen does. So, Owen, thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome, mate. You're very well. I just to say, it is 8 books now. I didn't say any of them were any good, but there's now a couple more we've done over the last few years and stuff. So I guess what's interesting, people always ask, how do you write so many books? And again, it's different when you're writing book with other people. Like, I'm very lucky with the people I've written books with. It's a lot faster and a lot easier. And also for my own books, again, you can write a book. Anyone can write a book. It's just whether or not it's any good. So no promises on whether or not mine are any good. but I'm good in terms of quantity, if not always quality.
No, they are good. Oh, and I always like starting my interviews with trying to understand the man or the woman, behind the scenes. Because I suppose you weren't a psychologist when you were born. I didn't think you wanted to become an NLP trainer when you were born. Maybe I'm wrong. So tell me about your early years, where you were brought up, and kind of like, school and those early years.
So basically, I'm from Dublin, Ireland. Was brought up, great parents, great family, really, happy that way. As I went into school, I'm quite a sensitive kid, so I'd be quite extra sensitive to things and quite empathetic, which goes both ways. It's good and it's also bad. So I struggled a lot as I started to go into sort of secondary school or high school, as they call it in the States. Got bullied a bit, more emotional bullying than anything, but some physical bullying as well. But the physical bullying wasn't really the problem, it was the emotional stuff. And I actually suffered from depression when I was, pretty 13 or 14 or so. It was quite early on, and struggled a lot with my sort of self-esteem, with the world, with how I felt about everything. Hid it from everyone, didn't let anyone know. But secretly I was like, touch and go with regards to considering suicide and stuff. So from that dark sort of place and journey, I managed to get through that. And from there, I had an interest in anything and everything that I could find that could help me to be able to get more in control of my mind and I suppose beat the darkness. And then once I got more interested in it, I then wanted to share it with other people, and I wanted to then help them as well, in therapy. And I came across NLP when I was a teenager, during the teenage years, still quite young. I think I read a book in it when I was 13 or 14, or I read a book which had it. Actually, Paul McKenna, one of his earliest book, when he was just like in his 20s, he wrote a book, The Hypnotic World of Paul McKenna, and in it had a chapter on NLP, and I loved it. And then I saw Richard and Paul and Michael when they came to Ireland, I think, and attended a short 1 day or 2 day or something with them. Met Richard for the first time, and that was it. I was like, I have to do this. This is Richard just had me. I had a sore face because I'd laughed so much when Richard was talking. So I came out of there and my face was hurting me. I didn't even really know that much about Richard before I came, because I'd heard a lot about Paul, and I think Paul's a great guy. And Michael Breen was also training, and he's a very good trainer. But Richard was like, when I saw him, it was like, I couldn't stop laughing. The stories were so good. And I knew this was what I wanted to do. So then I started assisting a lot of the trainings in London that they were doing at the time. Got to be known because I was the youngest assistant, and I was sort of I would fly over there and I would stay in the youth hostels because I couldn't afford anything else. And I'd be like coming in, you know, half asleep, half awake most of the time because I wouldn't have got any sleep. And I would drill people questions nonstop. So whereas other people were showing how much they know, I was like asking a million questions, which I could do because I was a kid, and learning from that. And then I just grew and got to know John Laval, who's an incredible trainer and great person, and got to know Kathleen, and who's amazing. And then got to know Richard, and Richard was living in Ireland at the time, so I'd visit him and developed a good sort of friendship with him and mentor. He was, you know, obviously a really important mentor and and then started writing books with him. And then while I was doing that, I was studying psychology in college, doing hypnosis, doing therapy on the side, and then set up the Irish Institute of NLP with Brian Colbert, who's, you know, one of the top NLP trainers on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And me and Brian set up the Institute, started delivering NLP trainings. Then I started doing less therapy because I just found it hard to keep doing therapy all the time. So then pivoted into doing a lot of international trainings, got hired in different places, got to travel, got addicted to traveling, traveled around the world lots, and got my TV show, the 2008, 2009, I think, on RTE, which is the main channel in Ireland. And then led into that led into some work. And then I had again, lots more travel internationally. And then I arrived to where I am, and I started studying like acting and filmmaking and all that sort of stuff about 5 years ago. And I love that. Like, I love screenwriting and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just in one of these places where I believe, you know, there's no point in just thinking about something. If you want to do it, just do it, create it, figure a way out. You can always find a way to do what you want to do. So luckily enough, that's what's happened. And then last year I moved to the States because I wanted a new challenge. So I applied for a green card as a writer, and I was lucky enough to get it. And now here I am. So I'm in New York. I do a lot of corporate work. I do some international trainings and NLP and other areas like that. I specialize in storytelling and influence. And yeah, and now I'm, you know, locked up during the Corona crisis. That brings you to the day. I just want to give you sort of a chronological view. I also did a TEDx talk as the standout thing, I suppose, as well, you know.
I've got the feeling you might have done this before. So well done. And very to the point. And you explained it beautifully. So obviously, not only you know your life, but also you've explained it really well, Owen. So I think obviously one of the highlights for me has been watching you, has been, well, exactly that. Seeing how you got into NLP and how then you started running the NLP trainings in Ireland, and obviously how you started diversifying. I know a lot of the workshops and seminars that you've done, I watched them from a distance, and a lot of people have been involved, you know, helping people around charisma, helping people obviously to communicate better. And so there's so many questions I want to ask you. Now, I want to talk about obviously kind of where we are now, but what does it take, you know, because what I like about you is I like that you're fresh. I like that you're versatile, and, you know, kind of like you're adding tools. And one of the things that I love about NLP is this essence of modeling, learning from the best and being open to learning new things. So, you know, watching you, what does it take to be charismatic? What does it take because it can be taught. And I know you teach, you've done this on the courses. What does it take to be charismatic and
so to me, out? Yeah, to me, there's two things. Number one, we need to change the way we think internally. And number two, we need to change the way we behave externally. So the internal piece, the way I like to put it is, what I try to help people to do is to be themselves more and be more of themselves. And I distinguish the difference between the two, because one of them, being more of themselves, means expressing themselves more, and being themselves more means being more authentic. So I always say it's about authenticity and expressivity. So with charisma, charisma is a subjective construct a lot of people understand. So they go, that person's charismatic, that person's not. But we all have charisma. Like, there's no such thing as a boring baby. When a baby comes in, they're lit up, they're expressing themselves fully and completely, and they're engaging. You don't go in and go, oh my God, that baby's so boring, that 2-year-old put me to sleep, right? It's the opposite. Dogs are charismatic in their own way. Dogs, because they're fully expressing themselves and they're expressing who they truly are. So charisma is something that we all naturally possess. The problem is we actually taper it and we stop it because of I suppose, the negative thoughts that we engineer inside our head. So we say, I must not communicate in this way. I must hold myself back. If I do this, I might be rejected. If I do this, I might fail. If I do this, I might embarrass myself. And as a result, we stop ourselves from letting the world see who we truly are. And when you do that, then you're stifling your own ability to be charismatic in that way, because you're minimizing the way you express yourself and you're not fully expressing who you are. So you're not being authentic or expressive. So what I try to do in the charisma workshops or in my book, The Charismatic Edge, is to try to help people to be able to make changes at two levels. Number one, overcome the fears that hold you back from being yourself, develop a better way of feeling about who you are, change the way you talk to yourself, learn how to boost your self-esteem by training the way you change what you think, which is a lot of NLP stuff. And then once they've done that, then the next step is, or also creating the right kinds of emotional states, then the next step is to change their behavior. So allowing themselves to learn, how do you tell stories? Because storytelling is a natural part of the way we communicate as humans. How can you make the stories more engaging, right? So instead of going, I walked into the shop and this is what happened, you're able to paint the picture. You're able to allow yourself to use the different tones of voices, to play the different characters, to allow the expression on your face to showcase what's going on in that situation. And so the expression of how you communicate, how you speak in public, how you tell stories, how you sell effectively, even how you walk and how you talk and how you use your voice, all of those factors all contribute to how likely people are to be engaged by you, which is a sort of a metric of charisma in many ways. And remember, charisma isn't something that everyone should have all the time. You don't want to be charismatic at a funeral, right? Because it's not appropriate. It's something that is useful in a lot of situations. So if I'm like, I remember once I was teaching a charisma seminar in Italy, and I was doing 2 days of it. And at the end of the day, I think at the time I just broken up, or my girlfriend had just broken up with me. So at the time I did a grand job during the day, but at nighttime I was sitting down waiting for my friend to come down so we would go for dinner. And I was lying there thinking of my ex and feeling not great or whatever. And a participant walked by and they said hello. And I said, hey. And the feedback I got after in one of the feedback forums was, you know, Owen, very, very happy with the seminar, but Owen wasn't very charismatic when I met him in the lobby on Saturday evening. Right. And I looked at that, and of course I was like going, oh, for God's sake, give me a break. Because I think the key is that you need to look at charisma as something you switch on and off, as opposed to something that you always have to have. When I'm sitting with, you know, my friends, or, you know, if I'm in a relationship, when I'm sitting with a girlfriend, I'm not going to be charismatic 24/7, nor should I be, because that would be exhausting for anyone. But when it matters, when I'm in front of an audience of 5,000 people, that's when I need to be charismatic. When I'm trying to sell something and you're, let's say, you know, whether or not you're going to eat the following day or the following week or whatever, when you're selling something, that's when it matters. It's when you need it that you're able to cultivate it. And you're able to cultivate it because simply it's about you reminding yourself to let yourself show them the real personality and to express it in a more full, more engaging, more dramatic way. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. And I know Richard obviously talks about the on-off button. And I always talk to my team. I said, look, you know, the problem I have is I haven't got an off button. I just can't turn it off. It's always on. And some people don't have a knob and they don't know that they're a knob, which is even worse. But anyway, that's a different story.
Yes.
Owen, about thinking, obviously, you know, one of the essences of NLP, being aware of your thoughts. I'm standing in the middle of the room on day 3, day 4, my practicing, I'm thinking, oh my God, why am I learning this now? So it's the essence. And I know obviously the power of NLP. And I think kind of talking to a lot of NLPers now these last couple of weeks, and we have a set of skills that, you know, we're very lucky to have. How important is it to know how to think and to be aware of your thoughts? Because unfortunately a lot of people don't know that.
Well, I think it's huge, because again, if you don't run your thoughts, I mean, I think Richard said it in one of his early books in 1985, Using Your Brain for a Change, right? Mm-hmm. And Using Your Brain for a Change, which is one of his classic books, he talks about like who's driving the bus. And the whole idea, the metaphor that we need to look at is if you're not running your brain will be running you. And it will be created by an ad hoc compilation of your experiences and what your brain feels like it should do at any moment in time. So it's not very strategic. In the latest book that myself and Richard wrote with Glenda Bradstock, it was called Thinking on Purpose. And it comes from what Richard says often we need to do, which is we need to learn to think on purpose, because his argument is most people think in an automated way. They're not, the way he describes it is you're not thinking, you're remembering. So when you think that you're thinking, all you're doing is engaging in the same old habitual thought patterns that you were doing before. So therefore, you'll keep getting the same kind of emotional response. So as you keep thinking in the same way as before, why are you surprised that you're still generating the same kinds of negative feelings that you were in the past? And so learning to be aware of how you think is the critical skill that NLP really helps you to be able to learn to do. So you become aware first and foremost, what am I doing inside my head? And generally speaking, from an NLP point of view, we look at the fact that you're making images or making movies in your head. You're talking to yourself in a certain way. And based upon the movies you make and the way you talk to yourself, that will dictate the emotions you create, which in turn affects more of the images or the way you talk to yourself. And in the way in which you talk to yourself, you also reveal some of your beliefs. And so with NLP, what we do is we get you to be aware of that, get you to notice the images you're making so you can make changes to those. We get you to be aware of the way you talk to yourself so you can make changes to that. And we get you to be aware of noticing the feelings in your body, and you change how you experience them or feel them at that moment in time. So you're taking charge over what's going on, and therefore you're able to think differently, as Richard would put it, think on purpose, so you can generate the right kinds of feelings, generate the right, most useful thoughts to help you perform in the way you need to when you need to do that. And to me, that's one of the superpowers of NLP, is it in a very fast way helps you to do that. And then when it comes to your overall long-term beliefs, which is underlying your self-talk, the beliefs you have about who you are, your beliefs about what's possible, with that, we have a wonderful set of questions, which is to me the most powerful part of NLP, which is the Metamodel, a set of questions that allow you to challenge the limiting beliefs that you hold, to challenge the things that you believe that are not necessarily true, because your beliefs dictate how you filter or perceive the world. Your map or the way you think about the world is not how the world is. It's just your representation. And if it's not useful, we need to challenge those maps so that we avoid the limitations that come about as a result of us believing in that story or believing that map of the world. And that's what NLP does so beautifully, in my opinion, when it's done correctly. And that's why watching Richard over the years, be lucky enough to write half a dozen books with him at this stage and work on, and I'm working on a new one with him as well. One of the things he's always focused on and doing is getting you to be aware of how you can get out of your own way, and you can make choices as to what you're going to do with the way in which you think, so you can set new directions that you're going to go in. And that's kind of how I see the whole area of how we take charge of what we're thinking and why it matters.
Thank you. And I will take this opportunity to obviously talk about Richard and, how he's influenced all of us, and but you in particular. I mean, as you said, he's been your mentor. I'm obviously very aware of the impact that he's had for me personally, professionally, without a doubt as well. Having had the pleasure to work with him, promote him, and, be in this shit in the room or outside the room, just having him around you, it can only be, as it is or has been for me, tremendously inspiring, and looking at kind of how I've taken my personal career, where I had absolutely no knowledge of NLP and I have never promoted a seminar, to kind of what I'm doing today is just pretty surreal. So I understand the impact he's had in my life. What impact do you think he's had in your life, and if so, how, and kind of what can you share that, he won't kill you if you share it with us, and what else? And because I really appreciate that people don't appreciate how important Richard is, and the impact that he has had. It's only with time, because I know that the biggest thinkers in the industry do appreciate and know who he is. So a couple of questions there for you. How has he impacted you? How has he helped you? Something you can share, and the impact that he has had in this industry.
Sure. So it's really hard to quantify how much of an impact he has had, because it's been so much in terms of my life. So Richard has been a really important mentor to me in many, many ways. From an NLP point of view, obviously, that became my career. Now, a lot of the stuff I teach is heavily influenced by NLP. And even though I'm not teaching a lot of NLP programs like I had been doing for many, many years, I'm still very much connected in the area. I'm still very much utilizing some NLP skills, combining with a lot of psychology stuff and other stuff. And I'm still working on books with Richard and still seeing Richard on a regular basis. So he's had a huge impact on me professionally. Personally, obviously, it's great to have the opportunity to sit down and talk with a genius and someone who has created technology such as it, and who continues to come up with new ideas. If you see him on stage and you watch him in action and you understand the complexity of what he does so effortlessly, once again, it's a real pleasure and honor to be able to witness him in action. Because again, it's like watching Nadal or Federer, or Djokovic play tennis. Is like watching Richard Bandler teach a seminar. He really is the cream of the crop. So for me, it's always been great to have that as an idea to inspire to look up to, and to do my best to learn everything from him, and to see how I can improve or succeed. So huge impact upon me personally, and obviously he's one of the most important people to me in my life. Then when we look at the impact he's had in terms of the world, obviously millions of people, whether they know it's NLP or not, millions of people have been affected by NLP. A lot of the stuff that's in now what we call coaching really came from NLP. Not all of it, but a lot of the stuff. In psychology, a lot of the stuff in psychology is again from NLP as well. So there's an awful lot of influence that he's had that people that don't even know his name, people that might follow, let's say, Tony Robbins, massive amount of what Tony covers is pretty much a repetition of what Richard does. So there's an awful lot of Richard that influences Tony, a lot of Richard that influences me, and a lot of it, Richard's influencing quite a lot of people and making a big difference to the world in that way. I suppose a couple of other things. When I met Richard first, and I got to know him, I remember being very worried about what he would think of me and being sort of nervous or intimidated. And when I remember he would be quite sharp with me. So it was almost like the more nervous I was around him, the more he would be hard on me. And eventually I just started to get to the point where I relaxed. And as soon as I was relaxed around him, he was totally, a lot softer and a lot easier to be around. And he really taught me that the biggest mistake that we make is that we battle inside our head before we meet someone. We have all these conversations going about what they think or what they should think or what we think or what we should do or whatever. And in reality, the most important thing of all a lot of times is state. And that's the one thing I remember Richard always saying, it's state. You got to start from your state, start from how you feel, start from your state, build the right kind of state. Another really great lesson that Richard gave me was, do as many different things in as many different places with as many different people as you like. So the very first time I've been to, you mentioned more than 100 countries now in the world that I've traveled to. And the very first time I did a proper trip around the world, I was actually retracing Richard's footsteps based on that quote, do as many different things in as many different places. So he gave me this impetus to really desire to be curious, because one of the most important, most underrated qualities of a great NLPer to me is curiosity, wanting to know more, investigating the world. And Richard gave me that. He triggered that in me. I had it in me, I think, but he triggered it in me. And so I started that journey. I started traveling the world. I met some of the gurus that Richard met. I traped up the steps that he traped up. I had some experiences shared. We shared stories together about Richard's time in India. And I went and taught seminars in India. And this was in 2003 or so. So it was my first time, not my first time teaching internationally, but my first time teaching outside of Europe. And I was in front of a hall of 450 people. And I was dressed in sort of an Indian garb. And I was speaking to this audience for like 2 days nonstop. And it was surreal. It was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had. And so, there's been a lot of influence. If people ask me who is the most important, if people ask me who's the most important mentor in my life, it would be my father. I'm very close to my dad, and he's the person I look up to more than anyone in the world. He's the greatest man I know. But if you look, you don't have to go too far to recognize that Richard is one of the most important mentors and friends and teachers that I've had. He's changed my life in many ways, and I owe a great deal to him. And again, what I try to do is try to, in some way, part of my mission is to try to share with the world some of his insights through the books that we write together. Like, that's what I see it is, that I want more people to have access to his genius, because it's made such a difference to me. that I want more people to have access to that. And John and Kathleen do that so well, you know, in terms of the seminars they teach with Richard, you know, and you know, and you promote him, and like there's a lot of people that are trying to get Richard's message out to the world. That's what I try to do as well, because I think, you know, more people will be so much better off, like I am, as a result of his genius. Does that answer your question? I even forget.
It does, absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Owen. No, I agree. Yes, 100%. So look, I wanted to talk about kind of your kind of, I was quite surprised, I must say, when I know you were doing all the programs and you decided to start acting. And I love it. You know, I think I've reinvented myself quite a few times, and continue to learn, continue to grow. One of the things that I love about kind of what I've done is just keep pushing, and age is not is not an issue. And actually, I'm now also based in the US. I'm in Santa Monica, and I'll come to LA because, you know, I feel we've got more to share and to reach a bigger audience. But what does reinvention mean to you? Because I've got my own way of seeing it, that reinvention isn't necessarily becoming a completely different you. It's literally about using your assets and, you know, adapting to the new times and bringing new tools into what you do. What does reinvention mean to you?
Well, to me, I've always loved the word reinvention because it gives us a fresh opportunity to look at things differently and to take on some new challenges. For me, I'm always constantly looking for challenge. That's one of my key drivers. You know, if people ask me what motivates you the most, one of the top motivations is challenge. I like things to be tough. I like them to be hard. I'm way better with my back against the wall, way better when things are tough. So from that point of view, when I see a new challenge of something that I'm not good at, and I like it, I like the idea of it, then that's something that drives me. So the way the acting thing happened was, I mean, I also call it a midlife crisis, you know, like it could well be some people go out. I'm not married, so I don't have somebody to cheat on or whatever, or a car. I don't have, you know, I'm not interested in buying a fancy car. I know some people have different ways of manifesting their thing. I moved to a different country and I started dabbling in, let's say, a completely different industry. So that's my midlife crisis. Another way to look at it, as you said, I like the word reinvention. I'm going to start using that instead of midlife crisis. But basically, it was
I've got to say, Owen, I mean, because I had a lot of people, sorry to interrupt you, I had a lot of people because I separated from my wife, and I decided to move to a different country. And I've had a lot of people going through the midlife crisis. And no, it's not. I really dislike the word midlife crisis, because I just think the moment that you change and the moment you start doing things that people around you aren't comfortable with, then it's a midlife crisis. No, hold on a minute. How about I'm just simply pushing and reinventing myself? So sorry, carry on.
No, look, I'm a fan. I'm using the thing. But I think that the bottom line is I got to a stage where I was doing grand. Everything was fine. And I shook up the trolley. I basically said, you know what? I want to try something new. I want to challenge. I have a few goals that obviously I've achieved a lot of the goals that I'd set for myself, but now I have new goals. And then realistically, in order for me to be able to achieve those goals, I need to move to the States. And a lot of them was to do with my goals as a speaker, as a psychologist, as an expert or whatever. But some of the goals were to do with, I want to give the acting thing a go, but certainly the screenwriting thing more than even the acting thing a go. So a few years ago, a friend of mine, I was told a lot when I was teaching the charisma courses, you should do acting, you should do acting, you should do acting, because I tend to be quite sort of dramatic on stage or whatever. And Paul Mussolini's, who was a great friend of mine, top voice coach, amazing voice coach, he would say to me when we were teaching a course together, listen, you need to try acting. So I gave myself like a month in the summer to come over to New York to study acting, and I got the bug for it. But at the same time, I started studying screenwriting. And I fucking loved that. I absolutely loved screenwriting. I thought that was creating worlds. And the reality is, back when I was a kid, I was great at creative writing. Like, I loved creative writing. I've always been great imagination. And also back as a kid, I used to act things out. So I don't believe necessarily that these are totally new reinventions of something I've never done before. I think it's just me satisfying an urge that's always been there throughout my life. And so to me, even though, you know, reinvention is a good word, I see it as just me adapting or adjusting and fulfilling more of the creative needs inside me, because I've always sort of, from a self perspective, understanding of who I am, I've always seen myself more as an artist than in terms of it as a business person or even as a scientist. Although I would see myself in some degree, I'm each. I'm heavy into research in terms of psychology. I always make sure that I know what I'm talking about. In terms of business, obviously, you can't succeed as an entrepreneur for 20 plus years if you don't know, you don't work as a business. But art is the thing. I'm attracted to artists. I love being around artists. I love being around great singers, even painters, and I mean, even painters is that I can't paint for anything, but musicians, actors, writers, it's the area I'm most comfortable in. And so as I got into it, I don't know, I just adored it. I got the bite. And now over here, I try to make sure that I'm taking some time because I do want it to be part of my career. I already teach a lot of storytelling in terms of in NLP or to businesses and whatnot, but the actual creating of things, I think I've potential in it. I think I'm good. And I need to get a lot better. I need a lot of work to become as good as I want to be. And so that challenge is wonderful. So I get to write, like I've written a bunch of short films, some of them won awards, but it's the writing of it that the feedback, none of them am I happy with. I look at all of them, I'm going, yeah, but I get feedback from creating them as an actor and as a writer. And that helps me then to keep them moving forward. So I'm a few years away of where I want to be, but it's great to have a goal to set that pushes you and challenges you that is going to be hard for you to hit. And that's what I want to get to. I want to become a great writer. I don't see myself as a great writer. I'm an okay writer, but I want to become a great writer, become an excellent actor. And they're the kinds of things that I'm that motivate me or keep me going or keep me excited, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just so beautiful to have that. I've got that same mentality. The tougher the challenge, the more I rise up to it, the more prepared. I always have this picture in my mind. I share this. I don't know why. I see myself like Rambo. I put the knife in my mouth, and I'm just ready for the jungle. And so, but I think that's what it is. I think ultimately we have to push ourselves with the impossible dreams and the impossible ideas, and to really push yourself. Because if not, ultimately, what will happen is we'll get to that age when we will regret the things that we haven't done. And life's too short. And unfortunately, sometimes, there's reality kicks in, all of a sudden a pandemia kicks in, and then your reality changes. Now, I know you're in New York. I want to talk about the current situation right now. I've been talking, I had a panel yesterday of NLPers, and I'm speaking to a lot of coaches, and I'm saying, oh my God, how much work are we all going to have? Because there's going to be so many phobics, so many depressed, so many stressed people. This is, and I think kind of part of the challenge that I'm having, because I'm starting to get a little bit more vocal about, these politicians and leaders that we have, because a lot of them are just like, I don't think they're measuring the consequences of what's happening emotionally, to a lot of people, and the impact that this is. And we're talking kids. You're trying to keep kids inside an apartment, for 5 weeks nonstop. It's just, I don't really believe that they're prepared for the consequences of what's happening. How can we deal with what's happening now? Any advice that people can take on board?
Sure. I mean, obviously being in the ground zero of at least the last few weeks of where the virus has hit the hardest. If you turn on the news, you see the media reports of the deaths in New York and the case in New York. It's just devastating. It's absolutely heartbreaking. If you look around the world, the impact, it's been huge as well. To me, there's a few things we need to do. First and foremost, the point that you made, right now everyone's terrified physically and people are terrified economically. But no one's talking about the psychology, and few people are talking about the psychology. And the reality is, there's going to be a lot of PTSD. There's got a lot of post-traumatic stress that people are going to experience as a result of this. Now, people sometimes will go, yeah, but this is not really traumatic. The fact that you just sit at home on your couch, we're not used to it. As human beings, we're trained to be around people. We're trained to touch people. Like, I haven't been touched by a human in about, 6 weeks. Or so, 7 weeks. I miss it, and a lot of people won't talk about that or won't mention it, but it's true. If you don't have anyone around and you haven't had physical touches in New York, it's a real no-no, and it won't happen for another few weeks. It's tough. And so there's that factor. There's a form of loneliness, even if you can reach out to people. In my case, I'm away from my family. There's an awful lot. When you're working for a company, you might overwork because you feel guilty that you're working from home. Like, there's all sorts of factors that I'm working on. I'm doing a lot of webinars with organizations that are hiring me to come in and teach about working remotely and becoming more resilient and managing teams virtually and all sorts of stuff I'm doing, because we're not used to this. And when we're not used to this, there's a lot of uncertainty. And when there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of anxiety. And this is the anxiety is then manifesting and having an impact upon our mental health, as well as how we deal with things, as well as the decisions we make. So the first and foremost is we need to recognize the mental health side of things is an issue, is a problem. The second thing I think we need to do is we need to look at where our attention is going. You know, I've said it on a few I do some Facebook Lives each day to help people get through the crisis, right? And I've been doing that all the way through the crisis from the very beginning. And what I'm trying to communicate, or what I start to talk to people about a lot is, where is your attention? Set up an attention budget. How much time are you spending on the media? How much time are you spending on social media? But even then, when you're in the media, what are you looking at? What are you looking for? And from a social media point of view, what posts are you engaging in? And the reason I say that, Bernardo, is if I go online and I spend 10 minutes looking at CNN or Fox News or whatever, and I realize that the world is fallen or this ridiculous amount of people died. And then I go in and I go to Facebook, and then I start to post in, or I start posting conspiracy theories. You know, oh, Bill Gates slept with someone the top of a 5G tower, and now the coronavirus is there, or whatever it is that I'm getting caught up in. Now all of a sudden I'm creating this set of stories, whether it's a conspiracy theory or even it's a story about people that really anger me, or it's political or any of that sort of stuff. What's happening is emotions are being heightened. Certainty is being increased, because underlying everything, we are trying to feel sure. And so we compensate by developing certainty over something that we're really not sure of. Like, I rarely see someone going, here's a post, I'm not sure what it means. I've thoughts on both sides of the matter. It's always, look at this, sheeple. Look at this. This is the real trick. This is what's really happening. Or on the contra side, it's like going, oh, all those people don't get it. They're all idiots. There's always an extreme of everything. Politics in America, it's like on crack, because everyone is either, you know, I hate the Republicans or I hate the Democrats. There's very little moderate communication that we see online because it doesn't get as much engagement. Nuanced subtlety and moderation is not very popular in the world we live in. The reason I'm talking about all this is because this is where it begins. Where your attention goes determines where your attention goes and what happens inside your head as a result. And so when we're sitting at home, our entire world is our social media feeds. Our entire world is our media feeds, right? We are not able to go out to the world. So therefore, how we think of the world is just influenced by what we consume in the media and social media. And what that means is the stories that they dictate to tell us, the extreme polarized stories, then create in us this us versus them tribal mentality, which is worse than ever at the moment. And it means that we cultivate all of these inner models of the world, which are not conducive towards us being able to deal with it. So the solution to that is we need to take charge of our attention. Where does our attention go? And make sure that we're not putting our attention in things that get us into the wrong kind of emotional state on a long-term basis. Because if you watch the news for an hour and you see the repeated number, don't be too surprised if after that hour you feel absolutely dreadful. The same is true when you're getting angry with the person who posted pro-Trump or anti-Trump or whatever it is the side of things are on social media. So we need to control where that attention is. And then the third thing we need to do, after we accept that it's a psychological issue, after we control where our attention goes, then we need to be able to figure out, what can I control? What can I do about this? What is under my remit that I'm able to cope with in this situation? And so you make a conscious decision, what is possible for me to do? Because once you focus on what you can control, as opposed to the many things you can't, your brain starts to feel like it can calm down a bit. When you focus on what you can be certain of, as opposed to what you can't, your brain again allows you to feel that sense of security to say, okay, that's okay. Let's stick with this now. The problem with most people is they don't do that. They focus on all the things that are out of the control because the media is sharing that to them, and they just get absorbed in it. It comes back to what you mentioned earlier, which is what Richard says about thinking on purpose. We need to control how we interact with the world, and we need to decide to focus on the things that are useful for us, what we can control, what we can do, how we can create opportunities from this crisis, where we can build better relationships. We can embrace it. We can feel how lucky we are. We can focus on what we're grateful for. We can do all of these things that are much more useful for us than, again, being hijacked by whatever someone posts or whatever the media says or whatever your friend on the phone tells you. Instead, you decide how you're going to spend your time, and you decide what you're going to do with that time once you spend it. Hopefully does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely it does, and it's absolute a lot of sense. And what you focus on expands. You spend more time. A lot of people say, I don't know why I'm stressed, and they spend all their days looking and searching and receiving news and being notified by negative news. So, Owen, I could speak to you for ages. I want to thank you so much for being who you are, and your phenomenal and exciting and interesting career. And I can't wait to see where it all ends. How can people find you? What would you like to share?
Thanks, mate. If people are interested, I have a podcast called the Changing Minds Podcast. I release episodes every Monday and Thursday. So there's a lot of content there, a lot in the backlog as well. But that's a good way. I've also a website, owenfitzpatrick.com. I've got a YouTube channel. I've got a TEDx talk. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. So look me up if you're interested. I'd love for you to follow me. So thanks a million for giving me the chance to talk, Bernardo. And looks and best of luck with everything that you do and all the work that you're engaged in.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I highly recommend you follow Owen. Go and check his YouTube channel. Some phenomenal material there. I mean, as far as talking about over delivering and providing phenomenal content, it's all there. His TEDx talk is a bunch of laughs. And yeah, listen, we're very excited and look forward to working with you soon, we hope. Okay. Thank you so much.
Cheers, mate.